I'm very surprised that we got it this early.
Me too. I'm glad that we did, though. It broke up the pace of what we were watching.
It was breaking the pace of elevated cinema, and now it's...
What are you talking about, dude? Star Wars is elevated cinema.
You're right.
Ladies and gentlemen, prepare for a cinematic odyssey through the 100 greatest films spanning from the roaring 1920s to the cutting-edge masterpieces of 2024. Carefully curated from the lovely people on Letterboxd. Two intrepid souls embark on a journey through a treasure trove of timeless classics and groundbreaking contemporary works, where each frame embodies the enduring magic of the silver screen. Grab your popcorn and join us on this epic expedition through a century of cinematic excellence, where every film promises to enchant, inspire, and leave an indelible mark on the soul. And now, for your listening pleasure, here are the LetterBros.
All right, welcome everybody to the newest episode of LetterBros, where we let a wheel decide our fate and what movie we will watch next based off the top 100 movies on Letterboxd. As always, I am Felix, and I'm joined by Parker. How are we doing today, buddy?
I'm feeling rebellious, Felix. Feeling very rebellious.
I don't like that. I can't stand the Rebel Alliance. Fuck those guys. If you couldn't tell by my hat, my Spirit jersey, we pulled a Star Wars, well, the only Star Wars movie on this list. We pulled 1980's The Empire Strikes Back last episode. I'm super excited about it. As Parker and a lot of people know, I freaking love Star Wars. It's one of my biggest passions and biggest niches in pop culture. It's something that has taken over my life, pretty much all of my life, but more recently in about the last 3 years or so, just because of the area that we live in. And I've been very blessed to have been able to do some more events through Star Wars, conventions, and we'll kind of dive into just a very brief thing about that. I just want to keep it just base level about this movie, because if so, this is going to be a 3-hour long episode of just me talking and Parker just nodding his head. So
I'm here for it. I'm ready to learn more, because this was kind of my my proverbial toe dip into Star Wars since I was I think 9 or 10. So I don't really remember the original trilogy. I recently watched the Darth Maul one, the one that's first chronologically. I watched that maybe 3 years ago and didn't think it was that good. And then since then, haven't watched any Star Wars. So I'm excited to get back into it. You're my you're the best guide I could ask for trying to understand everything as well. So
absolutely. And so with it being said, I wanted Parker to go into it, but seeing as he has very graciously given me the reins on this episode, I will be doing the synopsis. So as we mentioned, we're going to be talking about Star Wars: The Empire Strikes Back today, released in 1980, directed by Irvin Kershner. It follows the Rebel Alliance as they are pursued by the relentless Galactic Empire following their victory over the Death Star, as seen in the first Star Wars movie. While Luke Skywalker trains with Jedi Master Yoda on Dagobah, Han Solo and Princess Leia seek refuge from Imperial forces, but are betrayed on Cloud City. The story builds to a climactic confrontation where Darth Vader reveals his true identity, leaving the young Jedi and his allies to face an uncertain future. So, as the synopsis says, this is a grandiose Star Wars movie. This is kind of harkens back to an interview that Christopher Nolan had. He was doing press for Dune with Danny Villeneuve, and he kind of put it into the best perspective possible, where Dune Part 2 is the Empire Strikes Back to Dune Part 1, being that, because what we did to kind of prepare for this episode is that, at least for me, I saw the original trilogy in its completion. Parker,
you watched Return of the Jedi as well?
Yeah, because it's by default I have to. Once I've watched the first two, I'm I need to watch the third one. It's how my brain is wired. But Parker just watched A New Hope. not for the first time. It's been a very long time since he's seen the original trilogy, but I felt that this was going to be the best way to enjoy The Empire Strikes Back, coming off of what started all of this, started this amazing pop culture phenomenon. It kind of helps out because to that point, there are things that are built much bigger in Empire Strikes Back that we saw little glimpses of in A New Hope. Like that the world just seems so much bigger. Just we got this introduction in A New Hope, and I mean, when it was released in 1977, I mean, obviously I wasn't alive during that time, but a lot of people did not know what this was. George Lucas, up until that point, was known for American Graffiti, also starring Harrison Ford. So when he came up with this idea, we weren't really sure like what we were getting. A lot of people were going into it with, brand new eyes. And it's kind of weird to think about it like that because of just how big Star Wars has become just outside of pop culture. It is literally everywhere. Like, I think it's one of those things where somebody in somewhat isolation could sort of know what Darth Vader is, like just based off of like a silhouette, like somebody could say exactly what that is or know what the Force is. So obviously, A New Hope jump started this fucking amazing huge saga, and we didn't really know what we were going to be getting into with a sequel because I mean, this world was introduced to us in A New Hope, and it kind of left things a little ambiguous. Like, it kind of ends with the three of them getting rewarded for destroying the Death Star. But
that, if I could jump in real quick, the ending
go
of
ahead.
New Hope I thought was so funny. It's just, to briefly discuss it, it's just one quick scene of them getting medals and everyone cheering. Like,
Yeah, and
it's like
it kind of seems like
ride, bro.
Exactly. It's just like, you did a great job, everybody. If you were to just see that, you would have thought, okay, this was a nice little just story.
Right.
There's a bad guy running around, which I can arguably say that Darth Vader is not the villain of A New Hope. It's Grand Moff Tarkin, the older gentleman who's like in charge of that like fleet of the Empire. He's basically a very high ranking officer. He's like one of the top ranking military officers, but then you have Darth Vader that he just do whatever he wants because he can crush people's neck and do some crazy shit with a lightsaber. Like there's not much you can do with that. But Grand Moff Tarkin, I would say is the bad guy of A New Hope. Like he is the more villainous presence. Like he's the one that, orders Alderaan to be blown up by the Death Star, even though Princess Leia like gave up the location of the rebel base. Like he's living on some next level evil shit in that movie, where Darth Vader kind of takes a step back and is more mysterious. Like you don't really know like if he's human, if he's a robot. Like you don't kind of know what the hell's going on with him. But it left a lot of questions unanswered. And then you get Empire Strikes Back, and Darth Vader becomes the most iconic villain and movie character of all time in this movie. Like he is taking what Grand Moff Tarkin like kind of introduced in the first movie and just taking it up to 11, like, wanting to do everything himself with like perfect tactician. Like he is a machine going through and kind of just doing whatever he wants to try and get to Luke Skywalker. Like he's so menacing. He's my favorite movie character of all time. I fucking love Darth Vader, but that's another topic for another day because we're just focusing on The Empire Strikes Back, where everything is blown up here. The scope of it, we're going to more planets, we're going to Dagobah, we're going to Hoth, we're not just in Tatooine or just in space, or we're not on Yavin, like we're going fucking everywhere. It's just kind of fun to see that because now we get more of a story of what the Jedi are all about. We get more of what the Sith is all about, and we get an introduction to the main bad guy in
Palpatine.
Palpatine, but in this movie he doesn't have a name just yet. He's just known as Vader's master, but obviously like it's Chancellor Palpatine / Darth Sidious. So we get that introduction in this movie, and we get a little bit more lightsaber fighting because I mean I'm assuming when you watched A New Hope and you see Darth Vader versus Obi-Wan, it kind of looks outdated.
Yeah, and
Yeah.
I think is a lot in A New Hope, especially, and in Empire Strikes Back that didn't quite age too well, but it still has its iconic look. And I think the non-perfect special effects are kind of part of that. It brings a certain level of nostalgia when you're watching it. But yes, it doesn't look great, especially compared to what we have today.
Yeah, and I mean that, and it's gonna happen. Like these
Mhm.
were special effects that were groundbreaking during this time, but I mean, I can still kind of name like a couple special effects that still hit me to this day. I mean, the opening scene of A New Hope always blows me away. I was talking about a little bit in the last episode, but prior to watching Empire for this podcast, I had watched it during a 24-hour 9 film marathon where we watched them not in theatrical release order, but in chronological based on like the timeline of Star Wars. So we watched it with 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. And to watch A New Hope, which preface, we started it at 7 o'clock in the evening. So by the time A New Hope was playing, it was like 2 a.m. And I was there with our mutual friend, and this man was out of it. Like, you're watching A New Hope, and in my mind, I'm like, oh my God, like, we're watching the fucking Star Destroyer like go over us in a theater. I had never seen it in a theater before, and it was
Mhm.
incredible. So even just like watching the special effects there on a big screen with a sound system, like it hits that much harder. And Empire
But
was no different. I mean, obviously we pulled it on the last episode, and you saw my letterbox score. It was a 5 star. This is pinnacle. This is the whole amalgamation of Star Wars put together in this just classic movie that obviously is on this list for a reason, because it encompasses everything that Star Wars is all about. Like, there's the humor, there's the seriousness of it, there's the special effects, there's the fucking goated score by John Williams, which also gets blown up. We obviously get one of the best villain themes or just themes of all time with the Imperial March.
yeah, I
Get
have that in my
introduced.
notes. I'm just all I have is the Imperial theme fucking slaps, and it
It's
does.
so good.
It's
And
so good.
it's still great to this day. Like, whenever John Williams like goes out to perform, he always either ends or it's like the second to last song in his set list. He will always make sure that Imperial March is played whenever he's out, and it's for a reason. This is one of the most iconic scores of all time. I and obviously, like, for if you want to, see how the marathon went, I actually made a video about it, and I'll plug it in right over there somewhere, so you can see it. It was really fun. Like, it's surreal. It's probably one of those things that I enjoyed doing it so much, but I would never do it again. It
Yeah,
was
that you're a crazy man for that, and
Yeah,
I'm surprised that you made it that, all the way through. I would never
I
be able to.
know. So I want to hear enough about me. I want to talk about your thoughts on it. I know this is, like you said, you kind of dipped your toes back into the Star Wars universe. Obviously, like, you were aware of it. You've seen the movies before a really long time ago. So I want to know what your takeaways are seeing it in this kind of context.
So, I have an idea of Star Wars based off iconic moments, right? And I don't know if they're memes now or just clips that I've seen over and over again. I know what the iconic sound cues are, like in New Hope, the Cantina jam that they're playing. I
Hmm.
instantly was like, okay, it's that scene is in A New Hope. And the AT-ATs on Hoth in the beginning of Empire, like I knew that was a scene. I didn't know which movie it was in, right? So getting to watch New Hope and Empire Strikes Back and see all of those famous and iconic scenes and moments in context was really a lot of fun. So now I can consider myself a semi-casual fan of Star Wars, and I'm definitely going to watch Return of the Jedi. I don't know if I'm going to revisit the 4, 5, and 6. Well, I guess 1, 2, and 3, I should say, right?
Yeah.
The prequels.
Arguably the best Star Wars for me. I fucking love
Really?
the
Okay.
prequels. I've said it in like a couple other like videos that I've done with like other friends through the YouTube channel that Empire obviously is up there. It's one of the best like films of all time. It's one of the best like obviously up there with the best Star Wars movies of all time. Revenge of the Sith is my favorite of the Skywalker saga movies. It's my personal favorite. It's so campy. It's so fun. It was the first Star Wars movie that I ever saw in a movie theater when I was a kid. And I remember like everything building up to that moment of like, I know like we're at school. When we're done for the day, we're going to go watch a fucking Star Wars movie. And it's just, it still holds up to this day.
Which one is that, chronologically speaking?
Revenge of the Sith. So it was the 6th Star Wars movie to come out, and it's what we thought was the end of it. The prequel trilogy was all directed by George Lucas. This was kind of like his. It's kind of funny to say that like he was never told no, because it's like kind of his brainchild, and so he, like in the original trilogy, only the first one is directed by George Lucas. So then obviously Empire is directed by Irvin Kershner, and then the Return of the Jedi is directed by Richard Marquand. Then he was kind of given reins and creative, input to the prequels, which then ended up being very CGI heavy. It was kind of goofy for the time. Like, Star Wars is funny that everybody has their idea of what Star Wars should be. And when something new comes out, it's either met with praise or it gets fucking panned on the internet or press, or just, it's just weird to see this cycle happen with every single new Star Wars project, which is weird to say project because at one point it was just the movies, but now we have TV shows.
There's just there's too much of it. There's
so much.
It's like Marvel. I mean, Disney just has a way of completely saturating their IPs with so much nonsense that it's impossible to get it all under your belt. It's
exactly
crazy.
And I feel like I'd fall under the category of like, I'm just excited to see this world continue to expand and continue to just like, even with the new series that came out, The Acolyte, that was around the time when I started my YouTube channel and I was doing reviews for it, and I was posting, more reels about it on Instagram, and they would get so popular because the comment section was just an absolute battlefield of either this shit's woke, this shit sucks, like this, it's that, versus like just accept it or just don't watch it, which then defeats the purpose because now there's not going to be a new season because the people who were hating on it didn't watch it. So there's kind of a toss up between that, but that's always been Star Wars. It's always been met with either praise or criticism, but we're still talking about it. A New Hope in 2027, it's going to have its 50th anniversary. So we've been immersed in Star Wars for almost 50 years now, and we're still talking about it and still having these reactions to it.
So I really tried to watch both of these films, and specifically Empire Strikes Back, of course, because that's our episode. But I try to watch them with the perspective of someone who doesn't really have any idea of Star Wars, and try to learn things as the characters learn them, because Star Wars is one of those movies or trilogies, like, I don't know, Marvel, I guess. Like, everyone knows what happens in Infinity War when Thanos snaps. Everyone knows that Darth Vader tells Luke he's his father. Everyone that it's Yoda when Luke stumbles across him. So like, I try to put that out of my mind and kind of be surprised when, you were initially meant to be surprised, because that's how it was seen for the first time. You spend all this time with Yoda and don't know for real that it's him. So you have a different, you have a different perspective on what you're watching. So I try to frame it that way, and I think that helped. I had a really good time with it. It falls in line, in my opinion, of like Indiana Jones or Men in Black, those types of movies that you can put on whenever, and it's a good time and you're going to enjoy it.
Yeah, I mean, there's been Christmas parties that I've had that I literally just put on the original trilogy as like just in the background. Like, everybody knows what's going on in it. And I know I'm looking at Marty too. I saw him climbing while you were talking. He's so stoic. He loves that thing, dude. I tried to watch it in that aspect too, because I mean, obviously I've seen this movie a lot. So I wanted to watch this in terms of how we have been critiquing and watching the last 14 movies that we have been seeing. So, and that's why I love that I watched A New Hope, because not only like the visual and the auditory aspect of it, the acting got so much better
So much
in
better.
Empire Strikes Back. Like when
I
you
have that
get to
note as well.
shout out to Mark fucking Hamill, who
Yeah.
played Luke in the first movie as kind of this like wide-eyed, bushy-tailed kid. You're just like, I gotta go back and get some power converters, like just all this like silly bullshit that's going on. And then in Empire, he displays this wide range of emotions to where, you know, he's still wanting to like get to his friends and he's wanting to learn more, but then he learns that Darth Vader is his father, and he's just like, you could see the confusion and just like the anxiety that he's feeling over what he's just been told. And then that bleeds so well into Return of the Jedi, where he is like almost a completely different person based off his
Mhm.
training, but you could still see those little instances of Luke, like that kind of fun loving kid that we got in A New Hope, but he's more mature, he has learned more, and it's amazing to see that going into Empire Strikes Back. And Han Solo too. I mean, Harrison Ford was really good in this as well. He
Mhm.
just like
I think
he's
also
kind
way
of like
better than he
one
was.
page, and like you could see him struggling with like, you know, I got to go and make money. I got to go and get this bounty off my head from Jabba the Hutt. But as much as I want to do this for a paycheck, as much as I, you know, want to continue to please Leia and try to just like mess around with her, like he is starting to see that like he's a very selfish person. He's always thinking of himself, but when he's put into these situations, he's starting to see the grander scope of what's going on around him outside of him just trying to catch a quick buck and smuggle the next thing to catch another paycheck.
Yeah, I think that Mark Hamill's performance got noticeably better in Empire Strikes Back. I didn't
Yeah.
think he was great in A New Hope, honestly. But in Empire, I thought he was much better. And same with Harrison Ford. And I think it kind of had to do with the fact that we already knew the characters. So something that I have in my notes as well is like, I'm really glad I watched A New Hope, because Empire Strikes Back does not take any time to set up what is already happening. You kind of just jump right back into it. They're on Hoth. Like, all of this has already happened. We don't need to introduce you to the characters. So they get to start off hot. And also, they wrote, like, there's a noticeable difference in the approach that Han has to Princess Leia and vice versa. And their chemistry is really amped up in Empire Strikes Back. It's very benign in New Hope. Like, they lay the seeds, but they just went full force with it right away in Empire. And I think that it's Carrie Fisher, right, who plays Princess Leia.
Yes.
I
R.I.P.
think that
Carrie Fisher.
her chemistry with Harrison Ford was so good as well. So that was a lot of fun. We'll get to that when we talk about acting. I know we're not going to rank A New Hope. We can do it maybe off air, and I'll let you
Yeah.
know what I have it ranked. But yeah, the acting was better and the pacing was better as well, in my opinion.
Yeah.
Because again, for the same reason, you don't have to spend all this time setting up. If I were to compare it to A New Hope briefly, in the beginning there, we have this whole setup where Luke is at home with his aunt and his uncle, and we have these two droids, C-3PO and R2, who shout out to. I did not know that C-3PO was such a hilarious character throughout Star Wars.
Oh, he's great.
But anyways, yes, you jump right into it, and Empire never stops. Like, there is something happening at all points throughout that film, which is a lot of fun. You don't have to spend the first 25 minutes or so being set up for what is to come.
And it's fun that and that's another thing that like comparison to what Christopher Nolan said, because like when you jump into Dune Part 2, it's not telling you anything about what happened in the first film. It just assumes you've already watched it. Let's just fucking dive into it. And I love that. I hate when
Mhm.
we get sequels and we'll be like, oh yeah, remember when this happened and this? I'm like, we know. Well, that's why we're fucking here
Right.
watching the sequel. So I love that Empire just dives you into it, into a completely different planet. You were so comfortable with with Tatooine and the desert planet, and that's kind of like what we were, you know, introduced to Star Wars with. And now all of a sudden you're in something new, and it just builds the scope of that universe so much, and it,
Mhm.
you know, keeps you engrossed, and it makes it more fun. Sorry, I'm like getting burpy.
Getting the
And then
excitement burps.
I know, I just get these little butterflies in my stomach when I talk about Star Wars. But also shout out to Anthony Daniels, who plays C-3PO. He has been, I mean, predominantly every time you see C-3PO in anything, it's him. Voice acting, portrayal, like physical portrayal, like Anthony Daniels is still playing C-3PO to this day, and it's incredible. the longevity that he has and still doing conventions, and just props to him. What would you say? And I just because I'm curious to see what you think. What are some cons that you had with Empire Strikes Back?
So I feel like there's definitely plot holes here and there that are kind of jumped over. The main one, in my opinion, is at the end of Luke and Darth Vader's fight, when Luke falls and then just falls directly into a chute that leads him to be hanging off the bottom of the ship. I was like, okay, how do we get, is he that good at the Force that he just fucking did all that?
No.
Like, I don't think so. That seemed very convenient. I get that he trusted the Force when he jumped. That's at least what I took away from it. But I mean, dude, that was a pretty perfect little right into the world.
it's really funny every time you watch it.
It didn't look that great either. It looks like when someone edits like a I don't know, a crop of a photo and then moves it around the background.
Well, and like makes it smaller to look like it's getting farther away from you. Yeah.
So I think that was probably my biggest issue with the film. But on the whole, like I had a lot of fun with it.
Just going off of like what you were saying, like he was being trained by Yoda in the ways of the Force. Like you didn't really see him use the Force a lot in A New Hope until he turned off his targeting computer to blow up the Death Star. Like he just let the Force take that with him. Obviously, that gets a little bit more ramped up with getting trained by Yoda. Shout out to Frank Oz. He's fucking amazing Muppeteer. He is still like introducing himself to the ways of the Force, and he ends up becoming one of the strongest Force users of all time. Obviously, because his dad is fucking Anakin Skywalker, who up until that point was the chosen one and was like just a human embodiment. Like he was birthed by the Force. Like he's like a Jesus at some, like his mother in A Phantom Menace states that he doesn't have a father. She was just kind of impregnated by the Force. So to be a spawn of a living embodiment of the Force.
She was impregnated by Force. That sounds
suspect. That's it. I mean, okay.
Go on.
You're such a faggot. That's so funny. Yes, Shmi was conceived through, like, I'm gonna stop talking about this. Anyways, moving on to that. That's where I'll leave it at, is that he is a spawn of one of literally the strongest Force user of all time in Anakin Skywalker. So it's no question that the Force is very strong with Luke Skywalker. And I mean, Vader obviously tells it to his face multiple times, which this was kind of like a semi-emotional viewing of this movie for me, because this was also the first time I had watched it since the passing of James Earl Jones, who voiced Darth Vader. So props to him. James Earl Jones put on a fucking clinic playing Darth Vader, and originally he wasn't even really credited as Vader because voiceover work in those times was like special effects, like kind of like Mercedes McCambridge, who played the voice of Pazuzu in The Exorcist. Like she was never credited because her voice was used for special effects to enhance the experience of that character. So like David Prowse originally played Darth Vader, so he is the physical embodiment of Vader. Like he's the one in the suit
walking around.
And there's hilarious fucking videos of him, because obviously like when they're filming, it's David Prowse. He's this big Irish dude. So it's all of these Darth Vader lines being done by this Irish man, which is
what you're talking about. I'm a member of the Imperial Senate on a diplomatic...
You are part of the Rebel Alliance and a traitor. Take her away.
Obviously, like, way far off from what we obviously hear with James Earl Jones's powerful performance as Darth Vader. I mean, they continue to use James Earl Jones for Vader. I think his last live performance of Vader was in Rogue One, which is a prequel to A New Hope. That's where he actually came in and did voice work, because for the Obi-Wan series, this was the first time that they kind of used AI to make new lines using recorded lines that James Earl Jones had done for Vader, which is I don't know. I kind of don't like that. I'd rather have the actor go in and do it, but obviously at that point he was in his fucking 80s, so but I mean, I can't really think of any cons for the movie. Like I love this so much that like even scenes like that where he's getting sucked into a fucking air vent, you could argue it as like, oh, like it's just the force is strong with him, so it's leading him into here, or it's there's air coming into it and literally sucking him into the tube. Like there could be an explanation for anything in this movie, and you could probably find it somewhere on the internet. I would
Yeah, but I
say,
mean, if you had to
yes.
rely on that, I don't know.
Which at the time, I'm sure people were like, all right, like this is fucking weird,
Yeah,
until we had all of this extra fucking media to explain literally everything that's going on in Star Wars. Like then and to your point, you kind of have to take all of that out and push it away while watching this for the sake of this podcast, to kind of just look at it as a movie and as just a film, which is very hard to do for this, obviously. But that's
right. Well,
again
well,
why I'm glad
I
we
would have
watched. Yes.
another con, I guess you could call it, or a nitpick, really, just about the plot, I guess, of the movie and how I didn't feel that things really came around as they were foreshadowed. And I'm not sure, maybe something does happen in Return of the Jedi or future movies, but I felt that Obi-Wan, the ghost of Obi-Wan, and Yoda really emphasized to Luke, do not go to the Cloud City and to try and rescue Han and Leia. Like, do not go.
Mhm.
This is a trap. And obviously, he's going to go. We need to have a movie to watch, right?
Yeah.
But I didn't feel as though anything happened to prove that he really shouldn't have gone. Like, yeah, he finds out that Darth is his father. I get that, but he didn't have to face serious consequences. So why were Obi-Wan and Yoda so desperate to tell him not to go? They didn't trust him enough at that point, and Luke was really like wiser beyond what they thought. But then if that was the case, how would they not know how wise he was? Because they have the Force. And of course Han gets frozen, right? So that's a sacrifice
Yeah.
that is made. We kind of lose Han, though we know he's coming back.
Yeah, that there's a whole other backstory to why he got frozen in carbonite, just outside of the plot of the movie. They
Oh, see, yeah.
he hadn't renewed his contract yet, pretty much. So they froze him in carbonite, kind of being like,
Oh,
this is
okay.
the end of Han Solo, but then he renewed his contract. Harrison Ford has been on record saying that he's been wanting to kill Han Solo since Empire Strikes Back. Like he's been trying to find a way to just end the fucking character. It's funny
Interesting.
because like the Star Wars community, it's kind of in agreement that that's why he acted his fucking ass off in A Force Awakens. Like he gives a range for Han Solo that we have not seen in any movie that Han Solo is in, and he's putting on an acting clinic in A Force Awakens, but it's because he knows his character is gonna fucking die in the end. So
Dude, I didn't know that.
yes, you did.
No, I did not. I'm
You've
telling
never
you,
seen Force Awakens?
no, I haven't seen any of the new Star Wars movies. I told you this.
Oh fuck,
Felix,
bro!
God, that's like me knowing that
It's
Darth
been
Vader
10
was.
years, bro. It's
Oh
been
my
like
gosh, dude,
that's fucking crazy, dude.
you're ruining my potential fanhood.
Well, sorry.
For shame.
Well,
It's all right.
anyways,
I don't know when I would have got around to the newer ones. I'll probably finish
well,
the original trilogy.
but again, just like
But
it's
overall, yeah.
there's a lot of like they play it so well to the story that like you wouldn't even think of that being a thing. And obviously, like when you're watching it as a kid, you don't think about contracts and what the actor is going through, like behind the scenes. Like you're just focused on Harrison Ford playing Han Solo. Now he's frozen in carbonite.
I mean, that
Like,
makes
what the
sense
fuck is going to happen?
because they kind of had Lando Calrissian be the takeover. Like he's very much the new Han Solo if Harrison Ford were not to return, because they set him up to basically be, a very
Yeah, the
similar.
new like swindling, like
Exactly,
swashbuckling
they're the same
smuggler.
people or same type of character. I do think that Lando Calrissian's setup was cool though. Like I'm excited to potentially see more of him as a character, and I don't know what fate allies Lando Calrissian. So, hold your tongue. I'm sure
No,
he
I'll be
probably
fine.
dies somewhere. Okay. But yeah, I thought that it was fun. The new characters that we added were a lot of fun, being Yoda and Lando for the most part. I thought that the Cloud City climax and like everything that took place on the Cloud City, I had a really good time with, as compared to the scenes on, what is Yoda's planet?
Dagobah.
Dagobah. I still liked them, but I wasn't quite as engaged with the story during those scenes. Though I understand it's important because Yoda's drilling into Luke like he's not good enough. And we see Luke not being good enough. So I guess that is my main problem, is like we spend much of this movie seeing that Luke does not have a full grasp of the Force yet. And then he goes to the Cloud City and just fucking wrecks everybody, including Darth Vader, kind of like he escapes Vader. But I thought he wasn't that good. Like,
and
I
that's
get it. And it's a
because
nitpick.
like
It's a nitpick.
yeah,
Don't get me wrong.
you're making my fucking brain wrinkles itch, bro. No, and I mean, like, he's getting his fucking ass kicked. Like, this is his first time swinging a lightsaber in an actual duel, and you're fighting.
I guess he does kind of get his ass kicked. Yeah,
you're fighting arguably against the best lightsaber wielder of the entire Star Wars universe in Anakin Skywalker. Like, this man, he's so good with a fucking lightsaber and with the Force in general that you're literally facing, like, it's like if I were gonna go and fight fucking Goku,
or
who's just fucking good at everything. Or no, shut up. If I was gonna go and fight fucking Muhammad Ali in a boxing ring, like that, it's just give me the fucking gloves and let's just go. That is Luke Skywalker going up against Darth Vader in Cloud City, and you could see that. Like, Vader is crushing this kid, and he really only gets like one hit off of him in the shoulder, and Vader cuts off his fucking hand for it. So we're starting to get those inklings and those kind of like he is learning, but he's also impatient. Like, Yoda says it. He's obviously way too old to be being trained in the Force, because this is something you're usually taught as a young child. Like, the Jedi were known to, go around the galaxy and take Force sensitive children to come and train with them as Jedi. Like, literally, as they are toddlers, they're being trained in the ways of the Force to become powerful Jedi. Luke is a teenager in this point, or like very late teens. He has that teenage angst. He wasn't trained in, the proper ways of being trained as a Jedi. He's a fucking teenager who just wants to get everything done quick, and Yoda's fucking 800 years old and doesn't want to deal with that bullshit. Like, you could see that. And, obviously Obi-Wan is there to kind of fight Luke's battle for him, and, and we even see it when we get that kind of click into, oh, fuck, this is Yoda, because up until that, Yoda is this silly little green bastard who's just like, and it was really funny, man. Like, he was just, he's running around grabbing all of Luke's shit, but then it switches on a dime to where he's like, the boy cannot be trained, as he's talking to Obi-Wan. And, obviously Obi-Wan was entrusted at the end of Revenge of the Sith to watch over Luke, and he's done that for years. He's watching over the son of the chosen one. He wants to ensure that this child is successful in his endeavors in, bringing balance to the Force. So he's having to push Yoda in the right direction, even though, like, Yoda obviously helped trained Obi-Wan. He wasn't really his trainer, which was really funny to hear in the movie. He's like, oh, that you taught me. I'm like, bro, he's not his master, bro. That's Qui-Gon Jinn, but that's fucking Star Wars nerd bullshit. But what I'll say with this, just before we dive into the rankings, because I feel like I'm going to go off on a fucking tangent for this movie, it just, in terms of a film, this was one of the greatest sequels in a line of very good sequels that I rank up with, Terminator 2, Aliens, Dune Part 2. It takes an idea from the first movie, and even Godfather Part 2. It takes an idea from the first movie and builds a world around it and continues to expand it in a way that doesn't spoon feed you what happened before, and it lets your imagination run with whatever else is going on in the world around it. And I'll end it with that. It's one of the greatest sequels of all time.
It is really one of those quintessential adventure classic movies, right? Mm-hmm. And there's tons of them that are so good that you go back and rewatch. Like I've already mentioned Men in Black, I think, or Indiana Jones, or Alien, or Back to the Future, so on and so forth. There's so many that are sci-fi / adventure films. And I think that this one kind of is in the A tier for me, based off what I've seen in terms of Star Wars on the whole. It's not quite up there in the S tier with my favorite film franchises. Granted, I still have a lot to watch, but it's right there firmly with Indiana Jones and Ghostbusters and those types of trilogies. So I
Would you say
it.
that's your S tier trilogy? Was that your S tier like kind of franchises? Is Indy and Ghostbusters?
No, those are like in the A tier for me, like just a step below.
Oh, okay. So what's your S tier?
My S tier would be like Back to the Future would certainly be one. Jurassic Park, the Jurassic Park trilogy, as bad as the second and third are. Halloween.
Oh my! Don't even get me started with with Halloween.
Yeah,
and it's fucking broken timeline. But
anyways,
yes. Anyways,
yeah. On the whole, I enjoyed Empire Strikes Back. I felt that it had a lot of iconic Star Wars moments for me. Like I said earlier, that kind of clicked, and it was just a good time. It feels like there's always something happening that's engaging you, and every scene turned out to be iconic or at least semi-iconic. It's one of those movies that you just smile when you're watching. You don't even realize that you're smiling as you're watching it.
And I completely agree with you. And I feel that that is a great segue because I'll be smiling the entire time that we're going over our rankings or our ratings because it's, yeah. You thought I was positive about movies before. Just wait till this shit, dude.
I have a firm prediction that this will likely take over our number one spot. Just a prediction. I don't know what our average is going to be.
So what I'll go with it starting, obviously, this is a 15 for me. This is something that I continue to enjoy every time I watch it. No matter what, like Star Wars always puts a smile on my face. It's something that I love to make content about. I love to watch. I love listening to any of the scores. And Empire Strikes Back, I feel like while we obviously Star Wars A New Hope, you know, planted the seeds and like kind of budded into this phenomenon, I feel like Empire Strikes Back solidified it because it could have been terrible. They could have tried to build this world and it could have been, you know, the worst sequel to one of the biggest films ever made, and we could have gotten nothing out of it. But Empire Strikes Back doubled down and continued to grow what George Lucas was making in A New Hope, and it's part of the reason why we have Star Wars almost 50 years since its inception, and I will continue to enjoy and rewatch the Star Wars franchise forever. So that's it. Yeah, thank you.
Beautiful.
Let's see what you gave it.
Yeah, I really enjoyed it. Like I said, I thought it was very briskly paced, which I appreciate. It's a lot of fun. It's like, you know, what you're watching is historic. Like people sat down in a theater and watched these events unfold in real time without knowing any of the plot points. And it must have been a spectacular thing to witness. So just getting to partake in that retroactively while watching it on the couch at home is a great time. It's just one of those movies that, like I said, makes you smile. With that being said, I don't think it'll be one of my go-tos, immediate go-tos, but you never know. You never know. I gave it a 12 out of 15. I could bump it to a 13 if I had to go one of the other directions, but I think 12 sounds good to me. Because for some reason, Ghostbusters is sticking in my mind as the type of movie, like I'll put it on probably once a year or once every other year and watch it just for fun. And that's what I think I could see myself doing with Empire.
And that's fair. And that's what I'll be doing with Star Wars movies. Like if I want to get back to like the 80s or so, like there's movies that I'll watch, like Goonies, and then Empire or Return of the Jedi will like immediately put me into that like cozy vibe of 80s movies. So what did you think of the story?
Yeah, story-wise, I think I also gave it a 12 here, but dissimilar to enjoyability and rewatchability. If I had to bump one direction, I would go down to an 11. But I think it was good. I think that it felt like it still set a lot of things up for future movies without being blatant about it, you know, without not giving us anything to watch in the first place, which we see with so many movies nowadays, where the Dune, for example, where the entire movie is all just set up. This movie felt very much like the action was in front of you the entire time.
I get what you're saying though, that it's like, there's a lot of movies that like I like specifically DCU where
Mhm.
it makes a movie just to set something up that
Right.
they hope to make in the future. Whereas like Empire, it just gives you everything and it's making a movie like it's the last Star Wars movie you're ever going to watch.
Right. But at the same time, it's still laying groundwork for future character arcs.
Like with
So,
Lando and
yeah, but I thought it tied up nicely. I think having the characters kind of separate in a way was interesting, which we kind of had throughout the movie as well, not just at the end. Like Luke is
Mhm.
away from Han and Leia for a lot of this film. It kept it interesting because it was telling multiple stories. So I thought it did well there. Do I expect another 15 from you?
For story, 14. And the only reason why it's not a 15 is because and it's just for a personal preference, like just from a Star Wars fan. I really I think the most perfect story in Star Wars, in my personal opinion, is Revenge of the Sith, is episode 3. It's fucking incredible. Like, I will die on that hill. But we don't get Revenge of the Sith unless we get Empire Strikes Back and we get No, I Am Your Father. Like, this story
Mhm.
builds up everything that we see in Star Wars for the next 40, 50 years or so, with training in the Force. Yoda is a big presence that we continue to see throughout Star Wars. Vader obviously still is, I think, pretty much like the main villain of Star Wars. Like every time
Nah,
you
bro.
see
Kylo Ren.
Vader, no, fuck Kylo Ren. No, I love Kylo Ren. But I mean, every time Vader's on screen, your eyes are locked in, no matter what it is. Every time Vader is on screen, he chews up the screen. And I think it's because of the performance that he gives in Empire Strikes Back that we get that presence and that kind of
Mhm.
reputation around Vader, who obviously is my favorite movie character. And we don't get that without Empire Strikes Back and later Return of the Jedi.
I was gonna say, obviously, the performances, James Earl Jones and the guy that is, the Irish guy
David
that's playing Darth
Prowse.
Vader.
Yeah.
Yeah, obviously they contribute to that, and not to get too far off topic, but also it's a testament to the character design, like the physical design of Darth Vader is such an iconic looking
Mm-hmm.
mask and cloak. Like he just presents intimidation. So shout out to whoever designed Darth Vader's costume. And as well, we'll get to the visual and auditory appeal in a second, but there's so many shots that frame Darth Vader in power and with a gorgeous background, where you're kind of looking up at Vader, and it's just so striking, the imagery, especially in Empire Strikes Back. So I
Mm-hmm.
think I get what you're saying, whereas like this movie creates Vader as the icon that he is, right?
Yeah, because when we see him in A New Hope, it's like he's very mysterious. He's
He's in the
kind of like
background. Yeah.
correct.
Anyway,
Um,
lasting impression for you, I think it's gonna be perfect.
shout out to Brian Muir and Ralph McQuarrie, who originally designed Darth Vader. So
Thank you.
props to them. They made such an iconic, not even just character, but just silhouette. Like if you see like
Right.
Darth Vader in a fucking shadow, like it's him, and you're instantly shitting your fucking pants.
And the
But
score and the Imperial March.
oof, but
It all comes together to create that iconic vision that is Darth Vader. So
yes,
yeah.
we'll jump
With
into
that
that in
being,
visual and auditory. But
well, with
lasting
that being said,
impression, I mean,
yeah.
it's obvious. It's for me, it's a 15. This movie has left an impression on my life. It's obviously like it's something that has been a part of my life forever. Like one story that I'll bring up, Revenge of the Sith had just came out, and they're obviously like the next big thing about Star Wars is not even just the movies, but the merchandise. The toy lines go absolutely fucking wild in
Bonkers.
Star Wars. And during Revenge of the Sith, they had like an entire Vader helmet, because normally it was just like, when you go to like Party City and it's just like the front part of the mask with like
Yeah.
a fucking
With the band.
strap.
Yeah.
This was an entire helmet that came with like this part that would change your voice and had like Vader lines or whatever. And I was bugging my dad to no end. I need this fucking helmet so badly. And he was like, bro, I don't know, like, Papo, like, we're gonna get it, whatever. I don't know, like, just my dad just being whatever. And I just remember I like took a nap one day and I was woken up by the sounds of Darth Vader breathing.
That's awesome.
And I fucking look up and there it is the Vader helmet just sitting there, and he's literally seeing there pushing the fucking buttons to wait, and he's like, "Oh, Pablo, here you go."
Dude, Vader was literally your father too.
Pretty much, yeah. Like
That's
he
awesome.
was fucking wearing that shit all the time. I wish I had pictures of it. But I mean, that became my costume for like 3 years straight because I thought it was the coolest fucking kid because I had a Vader costume, but I didn't have the fucking little mask. I had a whole helmet that I could talk like Darth Vader in.
Yeah.
And it's moments like that that continue to pop up for me because of this franchise and its equal parts to this movie. And just, it's obviously has left a lasting impression on Hollywood and just has had a very big influence in sci-fi and just how movies are made, and personally for me. So very excited to hear what you have to say.
Yeah, I gave it a 14. I mean, it's perennial. Star Wars and specifically Empire Strikes Back. As a normie, I guess you would say. Like, I know that Empire Strikes Back is the quintessential Star Wars film. At least in my mind, it is.
Mm-hmm.
And after having watched it, I can clearly see why. Now, New Hope has a lot of iconic moments that you know as a casual Star Wars fan, but Empire Strikes Back is just one iconic moment after another, one iconic character after another. And it was awesome. I'm going to be thinking about it. I'm excited to dive a little bit more into the rest of the franchise. And I feel like when a movie makes you want to watch more of what it has to offer in other films, it had a positive, lasting impression on you. And obviously, you know, we could go on for days about the impact that it's had on pop culture, but I won't do that. Instead, I'm going to maybe upset you with my score for visual and auditory appeal.
Oh shit.
Which I gave a 4. Yeah, it just really
Whoa!
I'm kidding. I gave it
God
a 9.
Damn. Jesus Christ. I was about to throw hands, dude.
I bet. No, it looks great. What I was most impressed with, honestly, were the wide shots where it's just Vader or Vader and Luke. I mean, those were awesome. Those were so great to look at. The Imperial theme is amazing. The music throughout the film is just amazing. I just think that there's some really goofy looking sequences that keep it from being a 10. And I understand that it has its nostalgic charm, but at the end of the day, it just kind of looks bad. For example, Luke falling. Some of the, like, I think you could tell that some stuff was stop motion, be it the AT-ATs, like with their legs, a little choppy, but all the fight sequences I think look pretty good. No, but it has its iconic look. It does. But, you know, if I were to compare it to Jurassic Park, which I will for a second, that is a movie that I think holds up and could be made today, and people wouldn't say, "Oh, it doesn't look great." So I'm comparing it to that. It doesn't quite hold up. There's some issues that here and there.
The movie was made 13 years later.
I don't care.
But I get what you're saying, though. Like, there's obviously, like, there's movies that, like, the effects continue to have an impact on people.
Yes.
And you don't you don't have the veil pulled over your eyes. Like, the one I can think of is, like, the Exorcist makeup. Like, it's going to continue to shock people forever because of how good it looks. And, you know, some people might see, like, the stop motion in Empire Strikes Back and kind of, you know, just be like, oh, this is kind of like Jason and the Argonauts looking. Like, it kind of looks real campy.
But at the same time, it's so impressive because the scale at which they're doing the stop motion is insane. So I'm not necessarily faulting it. I mean, really, Luke falling was the worst looking part of this movie. I just couldn't in good faith. That's when I knew, because I was hovering back and forth between 9 and 10 for visual and auditory appeal. And when Luke took that spill, I was like, yeah, I'm going with a 9.
Fucking 1 point demerit for the fucking Adobe Photoshop zoom into it. I don't blame you, but I gave it a fucking 10. This movie is It looks great. The effects for the time that it was made are obviously groundbreaking. Like, shout out to ILM, who it's the Lucasfilms like production, like special effects company, Industrial Light and Magic, who continue to not only just make stuff for Star Wars, but they make stuff for like everywhere around Hollywood. ILM has had such a big impact in the special effects world in movies, and it's all because of movies like Empire Strikes Back that they, got to get their creative feet wet and be able to continue to push the boundaries for what can be put on film. And I mean, you could even argue that like Star Wars continues to push the visual effects to what pretty much becomes the norm. Like, even when the prequel trilogy came out, like it was a very heavy use on CGI that was getting clowned at the moment. But I mean, that's literally every movie in Hollywood now. You could see CGI all over the place, but it's because of Star Wars and movies like it that we continue to push the envelope for what special effects can bring in a movie. And I mean, John Williams was cooking with fucking gas in this movie. The Imperial March makes it a 10 out of 10, and just even like
I got
the score
chills.
it's iconic. And even like the asteroid field score, it's one of my favorite Star Wars scores of all time. It's just so fun and energetic, and it's just, this combo will always hit. It's just so good. For pacing, I gave it a 9 out of 10.
Oh wow.
Just because there versus A New Hope, where there are a lot of scenes that do lull. Like, if I were to go and rate A New Hope, I'd probably give it like a 7 or an 8, because there are moments where I'm like, all right, like, I get it, like, keep the story moving. But A New Hope is a big exposition dump of a movie.
Still a lot of fun. It was a very fun exposition dump.
And it is, but this movie just throws you back into it and is like, you already know what's going on. Here's all of this new shit. Here's all of these new characters. And it never, like, to me, really feels like it's dragging. There's some parts, like when they're in the giant asteroid, that ends up being like this giant fucking creature, that kind of was lulling for me. Like, they're just kind of hiding in this asteroid for a really long time versus just...
I loved that. But they are there for a while. And then it was so forgettable that I didn't mention it, and I didn't like this in the movie, that it was a big old worm that they were inside of.
Yeah.
If they could have made it where like the asteroid was about to hit another asteroid or something, I think that would have been a cooler escape sequence. The worm just didn't, I don't know, it didn't land for me. It was like,
sorry.
That was
the
dumb.
Exogorth is the name of the fucking...
Thank you, Felix.
It's okay. I had to look it up. I really didn't remember. But I could just feel the comments being, look, it's cool fucking Exogorth, you fake fan. But like,
I don't know. I thought the Exogorth was kind of corny. A little corny for me.
But you know what? That would have made it a lot more interesting if they're like, okay, we're stuck on this rock. We're kind of like hiding from the Empire, but this is also going to crash like into a planet or into another asteroid. Like,
right. And that's what I thought was going to happen. I thought that's what was about to happen, and I was excited for it. But either way, I don't know. It was fine.
Yeah.
Damn, I was going to give this a 10 in pacing, and I think that I'm still going to. I think that, I was thoroughly entertained the entire time. I thought that it starts off so hot on Hoth. I thought that the whole opening sequence was a lot of fun. I guess, I'm hovering with it because I think it does lull a little bit on Dagobah. I think it lulled a little bit there, but not really. I have more of an issue with it, with like the plot elements that happen on Dagobah, than I do with what I was watching. Like, I was still entertained by it. Yeah,
I'm changing mine to a 10. I don't care.
Are you sure? Are you sure?
Hell yeah. Who cares? It's Star Wars, baby. All right, acting.
Well, fuck. I don't know. See, I'm hovering back and forth because I'm thinking, like, if I have to hover back and forth with it, then is it really a 10?
What, for pacing or for acting?
For any category. I feel like when I give out a 10, like when you or I give out a perfect score, we know for a full fact that we feel that way.
But I feel comfortable with giving Empire a 10 because, like you said, you're thoroughly engaged in the movie the entire runtime. Like, you're not checking your watch. Like, I mean, in this movie, I wouldn't check my watch because I know what's going to happen. Like, I could put this movie in the background and be like, all right, I know what's going to happen. But I mean, when you're sitting there and watching it, like when I went to go watch it in theaters, you're thoroughly engaged the entire time you're watching
Yeah,
Empire
I
Strikes
agree.
Back. There's
Yeah,
always something going on.
I'll leave it at a 10. I gave the acting an 8. I thought that it was a major improvement from A New Hope, but some of it still just didn't feel like fully. It felt like I was watching kind of an action movie, where there's not a whole lot of depth going on. And there can be, depending on the performance, but it was there. Like I said, I thought the chemistry was really good between Carrie Fisher and Harrison Ford, and Mark Hamill was way better. I just straight up didn't think he was. I feel bad saying it, like, as someone who knows that acting is hard. I didn't love him in A New Hope, but he was way better. I would give A New Hope like a 7 in acting. So pretty good bump up.
I would agree with you there.
They're iconic performances. Like they've gone down in history.
That's fair. I also gave it an 8 just because, again, you have to think about it from the other movies that we have seen. Obviously, I'm going to love Star Wars no matter what. This ain't no Scenes from a Marriage. Like, you're not.
Right.
Obviously, with Luke, yes, you're emotionally engaged in his story and what's going on with him, and he portrays that on screen very well. I think this is his best acting performance ever. Because, I mean, he's also known very well in the voice acting community and all of that. And he's a fucking pop culture icon. But I feel like we got the best acting performance out of Mark Hamill in Empire Strikes Back. But it falls under, like, it's fun. They're still conveying some sort of emotion and you really feel and connect with these characters. But I'm not, like, blown away by these acting performances because that's not what's front and center. It's the story, the visual effects, and
the fun. It's just the fun.
It's fun. Like,
that's what's front and center.
Harrison Ford is fucking amazing as Indiana Jones, but you're not going to give that a 10 out of 10 in acting.
I think that the best performance in this movie is Anthony Daniels as C-3PO. I think that's my favorite.
Really?
Genuinely. I mean, every time 3PO was on screen, especially when he's with R2 or with Chewbacca, I mean, it's just so much fun. I had such a great time with C-3PO. There's a scene, there's a couple of scenes that I wrote down. There's one where he sees a droid that looks like him, and he goes something like, "Oh, hello," and the other droid goes, "Etucha," and C-3PO is just like, "How rude."
Oh, nice to see a familiar face. Ichuta. How rude.
Yeah.
And it's just so funny. And then I think he's talking to Solo at one point, but he's like, "Sometimes I just don't understand human behavior." And it's just so funny.
Yeah, where he's like, "I'm just trying to do my job."
Yeah.
Sir, it's quite possible this asteroid is not entirely stable.
Not entirely stable. I'm glad you're here to tell us these things. Chewie, take the professor in the back and plug him into the hyperdrive.
Sometimes I just don't understand human behavior. After all, I'm only trying to do my job.
He's just there, and like
Yeah.
he's really trying his best.
3PO is great in that aspect.
So yeah, when a robot is your best performance, it's probably not going to be a 10. but yeah, he's so entertaining as that character.
He is, man. And I mean, again, it's shout out to the longevity of Anthony Daniels, who like embodies that fucking character. He's known that character for such a long time. And I mean, I'm sure you can come at this from like an acting standpoint of like when you know a character and you like genuinely like have a connection, and like it's like that imaginary person as like your best friend. Like you could have like you know exactly how he's gonna act 50 years from when Empire Strikes Back comes out. Like you're gonna know exactly what he wants to do, and that's all props to Anthony Daniels. So, and Mark Hamill too. I mean, I know he had a lot of different direction for like the other movies that he was in, but he knows Luke Skywalker. Suspension of disbelief, I gave it a 9 out of 10, and I would say it's teetering on a 10 just because of really something that like you mentioned and I had written down too, is that like there's that, why are you telling Luke not to go to Cloud City only because and you're not really telling him why. Like obviously like they don't want him to go because he is the future of the Jedi and they want to preserve him, and if he goes to face Darth Vader, it's like instant death for him. But there's a way to kind of convey that in a way that,
but it's not. They know that Darth Vader is going to try and convince him to join the dark side, and that's what they're worried about. So
because they
yeah,
know who his father is.
Right, exactly. I gave it a
But
7.
you
Sorry.
gave it a 7. Okay.
Yeah.
No. So funny enough, I didn't, and I had heard this line a lot when watching the movie, but it makes so much more sense where, when Luke is leaving and Obi-Wan goes, he is the last of our order, he's the last of our kind, and Yoda goes, no, there is another.
Yeah, I noticed that. Do we
I'm
ever
like,
find
oh,
out who that is?
yes, it's Leia.
Oh,
Wait,
that makes sense because she was able to communicate with Luke when they were flying in the ship.
Exactly. And it also makes that kiss really fucking weird.
Oh, does that mean that I knew they were cousins, but is that when we
No,
find out?
cousins.
Oh, they're brother and sister?
They're brother and sister.
Oh.
Yeah, that's why
I thought they were cousins.
So there's a there's a scene in Return of the Jedi after watching it where, because there's like an arc where Harrison doesn't know that, but obviously Luke and Leia know that, and they kind of like, Harrison gets jealous, or like Han gets jealous of Luke, and at the end he's like, if you really want to go be with him, like, you can. And Leia goes, oh no, silly, he's my brother. And you just see Harrison's Ford's face acting go buck wild, where he's like, what? Because he's like, I just saw you guys kiss in the last movie. Like, oh, dude.
Well, they kiss in New Hope, don't they?
No, they like the bigger kisses in Empire Strikes Back when they leave Hoth and Leia and Han are kind of fighting, and she kind of just grabs Luke's face. And
yeah, that is an Empire. My bad. I watched them like basically back to back. So I had thought it was in A New Hope.
But no, it's Leia, dude. Leia's Luke's brother. She is also the daughter of Darth Vader.
Yeah. Which
it's crazy.
I don't know. That's definitely not explicitly told to you in Empire Strikes Back.
No, it's not. It's left up to ambiguity. It's left up to interpretation. How do you say the word?
Gibby.
It's left up to Gibby.
Ambiguity.
Yeah, that like it's almost like if you were watching it for the first time, it's almost like a throwaway line, but like obviously with like the grander scope of it, you're like, oh shit.
Yeah, I had noticed Yoda said that. I have it written down. Oh, who is the other? It just didn't click for me that it was Leia, even though it clicked for me that she and Luke had like a Force connection.
Well, there you go.
Yeah, but I gave it a 7 because what we talked about with the Yoda scene with Obi-Wan, as well as just a couple of other things like Luke's fall.
Yeah,
dude. Like, and also there's a couple of times when like Vader's just outright trying to kill Luke, or like he's acting like it, but he has said multiple times he wants to keep him alive. I don't know.
True.
Yeah, so nothing against the film. It just, I mean, it's a sci-fi action space thriller, adventure movie. I don't expect it to all line up if I were to, redline it together. And I'm sure that it does. I'm sure that there's people that do that. For me,
people that don't have lives, but
yeah, just off rip a score of a 7. I don't know. These are fluid, I guess.
Originality?
A fucking 10. I gave it a 10. And I'm surprised because it's a sequel. Like, Star Wars came out before this, and it's very hard for me to even consider like giving a 10 to a sequel because the idea has already been created, and now you are taking that original creation and making a new story. So can it be perfectly original? But I genuinely think that it's such an original sequel, and it did so many original things for this type of genre of movie, a blockbuster film, with the twist, with the setups, with the universe that it creates. Like you said, we go way farther into the galaxy and explore way more of the Star Wars universe in this film, which is all original. And yeah, I think it's a perfect 10. This is a quintessential like new creation that has just permeated pop culture for forever and forever will. And it takes something wholly original to do that, in my opinion.
Exactly. And I mean, I'll give it a 10 just because it's Star Wars. It's any movie that's going to come out in terms of Star Wars, like at least for like the Skywalker saga, for me is going to be a 10 with balancing on the sequel trilogy. But this original trilogy started a phenomenon with these first 3 films, and Empire being one of them, that I guess allowed the opportunity for there to be a third movie that completed that trilogy, that for a lot of people, they thought this was it. They thought this little run in the 70s and 80s was going to be all the Star Wars that we were going to get. And people were happy with that. And arguably, people will say that this is the best Star Wars trilogy. I can agree with that too, but I really like the prequels, but it's not without these first three, and specifically Empire Strikes Back doing so well that we get that. And it's props to George Lucas for creating and continuing to just in that time, just continuing to bet on himself and bet that his ideas are going to please the masses and influence the masses. And it's with the help of Empire Strikes Back that he was able to do so and create something wholly original. And obviously, with me talking about that, I gave Attachment a 5. This movie is so near and dear to my heart. It's going to continue to be forever in my life. I can't imagine my life without Star Wars. So that's where I'll leave it at a 5.
Yeah, I give it a 4, which kind of surprised me. I was going to give it a 3 at first, and I was thinking, no, I've given a lot of movies 3s, and I definitely feel more engaged and attached to Star Wars, and specifically Empire Strikes Back. I feel like I've kind of been missing out because I really haven't dived into these films whatsoever in the past 10 years, other than I keep forgetting the freaking name of the Darth Maul one.
Phantom Menace.
Phantom Menace, thank you. And now having watched New Hope and Empire Strikes Back, I definitely feel a little bit more of an attachment to it and wanting to learn more about the universe and dive into some of the other movies and maybe TV shows that are out there.
Well, it's a slippery slope, bro.
There's too many. But yeah, I think that this definitely has a leg up on my heart than some of the other movies that we've watched. So yeah, a 5-star for you and a 4.5-star for me. I think it's our first movie that's going to average in the 90s.
It sure is. It is topping Spirited Away. Let's do it. The Empire Strikes Back. Star Wars The Empire Strikes Back has taken the number 1 spot. Hooray. We now have an official top 15 list as well, which is awesome.
It does. It does. And it's about to get even longer ago. It's about to be 16 movies ago.
Which this has been so fun, honestly. Like, I love getting to spin the wheel, and as much as I loved getting to watch Star Wars, I'm so excited to jump into our next film.
I'm going to put some juju out there because the opening scene of Empire Strikes Back reminded me a lot of one of my personal favorite movies, The Thing, which is also on this list.
Oh, so shit.
If we get 2 bangers back to back, I'm going to be a real happy camper. But
that would be insane.
But we do have 84 other movies that are currently on the wheel. So we shall see.
After listening to Wild Strawberries, I'm really excited for The Seventh Seal, which is another Bergman film, but it's like it looks a little more medieval. I'm kind of hoping for that too.
I need a Bergman break. I don't want to burn up.
You need a Bergman break.
I don't want to burn up all the Bergman.
You don't want to burn the Berg?
Yeah.
All right. Well, we're gonna leave Empire Strikes Back in a galaxy far, far away. I said it. And we're gonna spin our next movie. Are you ready, Parker?
Oh, I'm ready.
Let me just make sure that it's on there. Okay. Oh God, here we go. All right, let's see. Oh no way, dude! Oh shit!
What'd you think it was gonna be?
I thought it was gonna be Dune Part 2. It was literally right there, but dude, this is gonna be fun, dude.
All right, awesome. I think is this the first movie that we've both seen? We have Parasite from 2019.
Nope. We both watched Empire Strikes Back.
I don't even count that because, like, dude, I remember Parasite way better than I remembered Empire Strikes Back.
Fair. That's fair.
I even had to ask you in our last episode, is that the one where Darth Vader says he's his father? Like, I was real shaky on Star Wars. Okay.
Yeah. Well, this is great, though. I fucking love Parasite.
Yeah, so 2 movies that we're familiar with, I guess you could say.
Yeah.
And that we have both already seen. I'm excited to see where it's going to compare and hold up to the movies that we've watched so far. Nice.
Yeah. When we made this list, Parasite was at number 8 overall.
That's
now
crazy.
Currently sitting.
That's crazy.
It's our second top 10 film.
It's currently sitting at number 9 with an average rating of 4.6.
With a million or 1.7 million 5-star ratings.
That's crazy.
That's insane.
That is crazy. All right, so you've already rated this 4 stars. I guess we'll see if that changes at all. But we do have 2019's Parasite, directed by Bong Joon-ho. The Letterboxd description gives us all unemployed. Kai-tak's family takes peculiar interest in the wealthy and glamorous parks for their livelihood until they get entangled in an unexpected incident. Yeah, I'm excited to dive back into this. I remember the first time watching it thinking like that was a good movie up until the end where it became a fucking awesome movie. We'll get into it in the next episode.
Shout out to Bong Joon-ho, that we get a new movie of his next year with Mickey 17 with Robert
I'm very
Pattinson.
Excited for that. Very excited.
So that'll get me excited for that. I loved Parasite. I would say like that was one of like the first like foreign films that I really got into when I started to kind of just like wanting to watch more movies and more like, just wanting to dive more into film. This one really got me interested in seeing that like foreign films can fucking slap. Obviously, this podcast has opened my mind to a lot more foreign films, but Parasite was really the first one for me. So shout out to Bong Joon-ho. I'm glad that we're going to get to dive into this movie as well. But as always, it's been such a pleasure to talk movies with you. Thank you for letting me rant about Star Wars for almost an hour and 45 minutes.
It was a great time.
But as always, where can people find you?
Absolutely. You can find me on Letterboxd. I was going to say at or on and ended up with that. You can find me on Letterboxd. I know it this time, Parker_Paget. If you want to check out my list of first-time watches for 2024, as well as the list for all the movies that we have watched here on LetterBros, my personal ranking of those, head on over to Letterboxd. And other than that, nowhere. Please don't try to find me anywhere else. Felix, you?
That's fair. As always, you can find me on Letterboxd at ETZIO911. I just got done watching Conclave, which was incredible. Everybody should go and watch Conclave.
I saw your review of it.
It's so good. But I mean that you can find all of my ratings on there. I'm very active on there. I'm also very active on the LetterBros Pod Instagram, where, be dropping some reels. It's where you get all of your news in terms of this podcast. So go follow that, and the YouTube for the video portion of this podcast. And make sure to rate us 5 stars and leave reviews on Spotify and Apple Podcast. Just because this is the episode to do it, please go and follow me on BatuBoy, BATUUBOII, for if you really liked me going on a tangent about Star Wars. It's what I'm doing all the time on my YouTube channel for Star Wars. We're going to be prepping for the Skeleton Crew show that's going to be coming out next month. So look for more news on that. But as always, this is the LetterBros podcast, and we will see you at the movies. And may the Force be with you.
And also with you.
It's like Catholic Church.
They said that at one point in the movie, I'm pretty sure. Or and with you too, or something.
Something like that, yeah. But
anyway.
No, that's the outro. Goodbye.
Bye.